that finale, it was a lot. It was a lot. Let's talk about it. Hey y'all, welcome to the channel. If you're new here, welcome to the tribe, and if you are returning to Fiercely V, welcome back. So happy to have you. Today we are going to be talking about the American Horror Story season 11 NYC finale. There were actually 2 episodes for the finale, and whew, it's a lot to talk about. So I actually did a video where I just kind of went over episodes 1 through 8, talked about, you know, what I thought about the series up until the point of episode 8. I gave some predictions. I was wrong. Very. I was not right about literally anything that I predicted. So, you know, if you want to go see me just saying stuff that does not end up happening, then go check that video out. But today we are here to talk about the season finale, which was episodes 9 and 10. And there is just so much to say. I waited a day before doing this video because I didn't even know, like, I needed time to sit with how I felt about that finale. I want to speak correctly in terms of how I feel about it, because it ended up being a much like heavier subject matter than I think any of us expected. I don't think any of us expected what we got. So I wanted to just make sure that I talk about it in a way that is very like sensitive. You know what I mean? So anyway, I gave myself a day to just really think about it and just really think about, you know, how I really feel about it. So now let's talk about it. Of course, while you're here watching this video, if you are enjoying it, make sure that you give it a thumbs up. And then also, if you're just enjoying the content over here at Fiercely V, go ahead and subscribe to the tribe so that you don't miss any of my other uploads. And yeah, let's go ahead and get into my final thoughts about AHS season 11 NYC as a whole, and specifically my final thoughts about the 2-episode season finale. So let me just go ahead and start by saying that everything that I thought was going to happen in the finale, none of it happened. I was dead wrong. And you know what? Let me just say that I am usually really good with my predictions when it comes to these shows. Like, usually I'll be making good predictions. I'll be spot on. But American Horror Story, they shocked the hell out of me. They did not give me anything that I thought they were going to give me in terms of this season finale. And I'm going to talk about that a little bit more once I get towards the end of this video. But to start off, I just want to say that as a whole, I think that I definitely did not hate this season. I think that there are for sure some critiques that I have, and I'm going to talk about those a little bit later. But I think that in a lot of ways this season did a lot of things right. But there were some things that I have critiques on, because I've seen some people saying this is one of the best seasons. I'm not gonna say it's one of the best seasons. I'm not gonna say this is one of the best seasons when Coven and Murder House and Asylum exist. You know what I mean? So I'm not gonna go that far, but I didn't dislike the season. So let's go ahead and talk about the 2 episodes that we got. So episodes 9 and 10 were following the death of Theo. So at the end of episode 8, we saw Theo getting carried away by Big Daddy and then all the spirits of the men that were out on Fire Island. And so we start off episode 9 at Theo's funeral. And while we're at Theo's funeral, Sam ends up passing out. And when he wakes up, he's in a hospital. We can pretty quickly tell that he's in some sort of like dream state or whatever, because his doctor is Theo, and then the other nurse that's seeing him is the young man that he killed. So we can pretty much tell off top that it's some sort of a dream state. Now, me knowing American Horror Story and how they like to throw weird curveballs to us, I'm like, is the whole episode a simulation? Like, was he in a coma the whole time? Like, you just really never know with American Horror Story. So, but it turns out that this was like a afterlife dream state type of vibe, basically. And we end up seeing that in real life, Sam is basically, he's dying, and he's dying of the virus that has been infecting everybody, which is AIDS. I think we all knew that it was AIDS that they were talking about. What I didn't know was whether or not they were gonna actually call it AIDS in the show. And so they actually did. Like, they named it. They were like, this is what it is. So we actually find out that Sam is in a hospital. He's dying of AIDS. Nobody, you know, really is there with him, checking on him or anything like that. And he's really like shocked, because he's like, what? You know, I had so much money and I had so much, you know, notoriety or whatever. And Theo is basically just letting him know, yeah, but like, look at how you treated people. Look how many people you destroyed. Like, Sam is a horrible person. And here's my thing about this whole little sequence, because what we basically see is we see Theo just kind of taking Sam through this like hospital that they're in this dream state. And, you know, we see people from his past. We see his dad, who it seems like he was abused by. We see an old boss of his who, you know, made him feel small all the time and made him feel insignificant all the time. We see another person that he killed, and it almost felt like a redemption arc for Sam. And I'm gonna just tell y'all, I hate when horrible characters like Sam end up getting a redemption arc. Like, I just hate it. I'm not a fan of it. Listen, I understand that, you know, the idea is that anybody can be redeemed if they realize the error of their ways and da-da-da. Listen, the horrendous things that Sam did this season, I hate when characters like him get a redemption arc. Like, in my mind, I'm like, no, ain't no redemption for people like him. But that's just me, you know? But anyway, we basically see Theo, you know, taking him through, and he's encountering these different people. And it's basically, we see Big Daddy basically like we see Big Daddy torturing his dad while Sam is like in a cage, and Henry is like taunting him. And then we see, we get another like sequence where we see Big Daddy torturing his old boss while Sam is in the cage and Henry is taunting him. And then the final sequence that we see Henry in, he's on the beach on Fire Island and he's running, and Big Daddy is chasing him, and Henry is standing there and he's like, you can't outrun him, you can't outrun the darkness. And then eventually Big Daddy catches up with him. And then we see the spirit of the dead men from Fire Island come back, and Theo is with them, and they're just kind of standing there. And basically what you realize is that Big Daddy's purpose is to lead people who are dying of the virus. His entire purpose is to lead the people who are dying of the virus into the afterlife. So it's almost as if Big Daddy is like, the whole time we're trying to figure out, like, is Big Daddy a ghost? Is he this? Is he that? He's basically like the visual representation of the AIDS virus ending somebody's life. So that's why if we go back and we think about like other scenes that happened this season, anytime Big Daddy appeared before somebody, it was somebody who was going to die from the virus and who was about to die. So even when we go back and we think about Barbara's death in the shower, what we saw was Big Daddy choking her out. But that was just the visual representation of her dying from the virus. So I really liked that aspect of it. I think that was a really fun twist. I think that most people kind of started to realize that, okay, it seems like only certain people can see Big Daddy and like something else is going on with him. I think most of us had kind of realized that, okay, is he a ghost? Is he an apparition? Is he a manifestation of Patrick's guilt? Like, what is he? And it turns out that he's that visual representation of AIDS taking someone's life. And so he comes, you know, in the last scene that we see of Sam, he's on the beach, he's running, Big Daddy catches him, and he actually ends up turning around and he removes Big Daddy's mask, and then we see Big Daddy transform. Once the mask comes off, he just transforms into this, you know, nice looking young blonde man. Now, I don't know who that was supposed to represent. It almost felt like Sam knew the person, because as soon as he takes the mask off, he embraces the person and he kisses them, and it's like there's like a tenderness to it. So I'm like, is this somebody from Sam's past that he felt a lot of affection for? I don't really know. If y'all have some thoughts on that, let me know what y'all think. I did see something online where somebody was saying that it wasn't anybody that Sam actually knew. It was just the thing that he loved the most, which was beautiful men, or beautiful young men. And so I'm like, yeah, I could see that too, but I don't know. For some reason, I got the vibe that it was just someone he knew from his past, and also because all of the other everything else that he had seen while he was in this like unconscious dream state, it was people from his past. So I don't know. Let me know what y'all think. But either way, Sam kisses the person. They embrace, they kiss, and then they just vanish. And then we see Henry dumping out an urn into the water, and you know, we assume that that's Sam's ashes. We go from that to all of a sudden it's 7 years later, and we see Gino going through the hospital. He's walking through the hospital. We see all these different men in these different hotel rooms in the hospital rooms. And we see all these different men in these different hospital rooms. Some of them are like, there's like plastic up, and it's giving very much like, clearly this is the AIDS ward, and it's like they're being treated as if they're like contaminated, you know, like you see like plastic bubble wrap and stuff, like they're like closed off, like they're contaminated. And so then Gino, he finally gets to Patrick's hospital room, and you can just see that like he's just not being taken care of. Gino changes the water from some flowers that he had brought previously. The water was brown. When he goes, he looks at the little IV drip thing and it's empty. Like, how did the nurses let the IV thing get empty? And it's basically just showing that like during this time when the AIDS virus was like brand new, nobody knew what it was, everybody was dying, it was this specific community of gay men, which was a community that, I mean, the world just did not care about. And so it just shows how much they were not even trying to like take care of these men. It's like there was no cure at the time because it was new. Hi, so just popping in during editing because I have no idea why I worded that like that. There still isn't a cure for AIDS. Currently, what we have are treatments for the HIV infection, which is what people get that can turn into full-blown AIDS, but oftentimes nowadays it doesn't, because there are really thorough treatments that are able to treat the infection and prevent it from ever turning into AIDS, which is what deteriorates your immune system and usually leads to death. So I just wanted to clarify that, because I don't know why I was just like, back then there was no cure for AIDS. There actually still is not a cure for AIDS. All right, back to the video. And so it's like, inevitably you're going to die, right? But it's like you're not even going to try to make them comfortable. You're not going to still like do your job and make sure that their IV bag is not empty, you know, like you just saw like the blatant neglect. And, you know, realistically, it was because people were they really did treat people who had AIDS as if they were contaminated. They didn't want to touch them. They didn't want to really care for them like that. They were afraid they would get it. And honestly, people are still like that. people are still like that when it comes to HIV and AIDS. Unfortunately, they still act like it's like they're gonna catch it if they're close to you or something. You know what I mean? Like, we see stuff like that happening. We see things being said. One of the things that popped into my mind was the whole situation with the rapper DaBaby, where he was like, you know, making some disgusting comments about people with HIV and AIDS, about how they're dirty or whatever, or they're disgusting or whatever. And it's like, that was very much the vibe when this was first came on the scene and was like devastating the gay community. And it's like, man, like, we've come so far, but at the same time we haven't, because people literally still treat HIV and AIDS, or people who have HIV and AIDS, like they're just like contaminated, like they're dirty. You know what I mean? And it's really sad. It's really sad. But man, watching Patrick wither away in that hospital bed was rough. It was rough. And it was so far from what I expected, but I'm gonna talk about that later. But basically, you know, we see Gino, you know, just kind of taking care of him. Patrick and him end up having a conversation. Patrick wants him to sell his life insurance policy, because he's like, if you don't sell it, and, you know, I want the money to go to you, and if you don't sell it, it's gonna automatically go to my parents when I pass. So we kind of get the understanding that Patrick knows that this is the end for him, and he, you know, he wants Gino to be prepared. But, you know, Gino is trying to be strong, but also, I mean, obviously, I'm sure he's not ready to let go. You know what I mean? And so, you know, we just see Gino just kind of in the hospital taking care of him. And then eventually, Gino leaves. And, oh, I forgot to say, we also find out during this time that Patrick has gone blind. The doctor comes in. He's like, his retinas are not attached anymore. And Gino is like, I mean, you can't do anything. You can't reattach them. You can't. And we just see how, like, the doctor is just like, they don't even want to try. They don't want to do anything. Like, and that's the part that was like so sad. Is just like, they treated these men, these human beings, these people, you know what I mean, as if they were just lost causes, because they didn't care enough about that community to try harder. And it made me think about back at the beginning of the season when we saw the deer on Fire Island, and how, you know, you have all these deer, they have this disease, and their solution was, we'll just kill them, just shoot them all. And to see that juxtaposed with like how they ended up handling these real actual human beings who have this virus, it was literally just put them in the hospital and let them die. And it's like, these are people, like, these are human beings, but it's like they weren't even trying. And this is how it really was. So it was just a lot. It was a lot. So basically, you know, Patrick, he's blind and everything. After Gino leaves, I think the IV thing that's connected to him falls out of the bed or something, and he's reaching over to try to get it. He's blind, he can't see, he ends up falling out of the bed, and then he's like trying to call for help, but nobody comes, so he ends up getting in his wheelchair, and he's like rolling down the hall of the hospital, and then he ends up encountering the spirit of his ex-wife Barbara, and she's wearing her wedding gown. And this is when we realize that, okay, this is Patrick's scene, the same way Sam had the scene in the dream state. This is Patrick's scene like that. And like Sam had Theo guiding him through, Barbara is going to guide Patrick through. So basically, she ends up guiding Patrick through some events of his past. We end up seeing the encounter when Patrick and Gino first met each other at a crime scene. And, you know, Gino was the reporter asking questions, trying to figure out what was going on. And Patrick was the officer. And so we see their kind of first little encounter or whatever. Gino, you know, slid him his digits on the sly or whatever. And, you know, so we see that first encounter of theirs. And then we end up going to another scene where it was a situation where Patrick had a black partner who had shot a suspect, and they made it clear that it was like he overreacted and shot somebody. Like, it wasn't like the shooting was justified. Like, he clearly overreacted, got scared, and shot somebody. And so we see like the officer freaking out, and they're trying to calm him down, and Patrick is basically trying to make him feel better about what he's done, and he's like, no, you did the right thing, you did the right thing. And we see Barbara talking to Patrick, and she's like, you know, you knew that he had overreacted, but you were just trying to make him feel comfortable. And so we see the partner, he's freaking out, he's got blood all over him, and they're in like the locker room or something of the police station, I'm assuming, and he gets in the shower because he's like got blood all over him. And so the guy gets in the shower, and Patrick is literally just standing outside the shower, like calming him down, like, you know, hey, it's okay, you did the right thing, like, you know, you did what any of us would have done. And as he's talking to him, he notices that there's like some blood like on his face or something that he's missing. And so Patrick gets in there with him to wipe it off of his face. Now, I couldn't tell if this was a situation where Patrick and this man had dealt with each other before, or if this was their first time being involved with each other in this way. But whatever the case, they end up having a little moment and sharing a kiss. And while they're sharing this kiss, the other officer comes in, he sees what's happening, he's like, what the hell is going on? You know, obviously everybody's homophobic as hell, so he's like, you know, what the hell, what's going on? And Patrick impulsively he pushes the guy up against the wall. The guy like hits his head up against something and everything, calls him the F word, and acts like he just came at me, and just turns it around on the guy and makes it seem like the guy just like, you know, gave him like unwantingly, like assaulted him basically. And you can tell the fact that this is a memory that Patrick ends up going to during this whole thing where he's like, it's the end for him. It's like clear that this is something that has really like affected him going forward. And it really just goes to show how far he was willing to go to hide who he was. And the Patrick that we got to know in the earlier episodes, you know, that's exactly who he was. Somebody that was just going above and beyond every single day of his life to not be who he was, to hide who he was. And this scene just kind of showed that like, that's how far he was willing to go so that people would not know who he truly was. But basically, like, the last scene that we see him go to is a scene where when he was a kid, he's in the woods with his dad. His dad is teaching him how to shoot, and his dad is, you know, being very like aggressive, verbally abusive and stuff. And he's just like, don't you want to be, you know, don't you want to be wear a badge like me and your granddad? And he gives Patrick, little boy Patrick is like a kid, and he gives him the gun, and, you know, like the blowback from the gun is so intense that Patrick is like flinching every time he shoots, so he's missing the target, and his dad is just getting angry and irate and yelling at him. And so his dad ends up taking the gun and like literally holding it like right to his ear and just pulling the trigger over and over and over and over. Now, if you have ever shot a gun, gone to the gun range, whatever, you know how loud that is. Like, you literally have to wear ear protection in the gun range. So the fact that he's sitting here with this gun right here by this little boy's ear, just pulling the trigger over and over and over, and then he walks off and he's like pissed and he's going off, and then you just see like blood trickling out of little Patrick's ear. And I was like, oh my God. And I feel like that scene was just to show us like, this is why Patrick couldn't be who he was. This is why, because if this was a family that he grew up with, there's no way they would have supported him coming out as a gay man. And so it's like, this is the environment that creates the reality for someone where they feel like they can never be who they truly are. They have to go out of their way, above and beyond, to lie and pretend to be somebody that they're not, because the environment he grew up in, this was the environment he grew up in. So it's just like, man, I felt so bad for Patrick. And it's crazy because I fully 100% expected to go into this season finale and end up hating Patrick, because I've been side-eyeing him all season. But they just went in such a different direction that I wasn't expecting. And I left this finale feeling so bad for Patrick, and just, man, like literally shedding a tear for him by the end. So it's just like, wow, like they shocked me. They went a completely different direction. But basically after Patrick, gets out of this, last little, vision within his little dream state situation, he ends up, we go back to him. He's back in his hospital bed. He wakes up, he's back in his hospital bed. Gino is there with him. And then he looks over and he sees Big Daddy. And at this point, we know that Big Daddy is there to take you over to the other side. And so he looks over, he sees Big Daddy, and then, he ends up, passing on, and Gino is there with him. And then we get a sequence where they're at his funeral. We see Gino there, he's really out of it. He's just kind of like in a haze. Patrick's parents are not really, Gino tries to, say something comforting to Patrick's parents, and they won't even like acknowledge him or whatever. And then, he notices that the casket is closed, and he's like, no, like, we specifically wanted the casket to be open so people could see what happened to him. You know what I mean? But it's like the shame that his family feels for who he was and what his lifestyle was, they would rather have the casket closed, and so that nobody has to know or has to see, you know what I mean? And so Gino ends up like, running up to the casket and opening it, and Adam ends up being there to, just kind of comfort him or whatever. And then we get this sequence that is so, this sequence with Gino where he's at an outdoor funeral, and we just see just men lining up. We see Big Daddy digging a hole, and then we just see a whole entire like montage of men just lining up and jumping in and jumping in and jumping in. And when I tell you, I could not get that scene out of my mind the entire night after I watched it. I was like, that was so haunting and just so chilling and like powerful, because it's like literally you just see these men one by one falling into the hole. And that's the representation of how literally the entire community was just falling to this virus. Everybody around him, everybody he knew. And it was so chilling. Man, that was a well done scene. That scene was well done. It was so powerful. Like it had me. And so, we end up getting this montage of Gino, and of course he has the AIDS virus as well. And so we get this montage of him, and we see Big Daddy showing up. And of course we know Big Daddy shows up to take people to the other side, but of course Gino is a fighter. Gino been fighting death since the season started, and it didn't stop. So we see this entire long montage of him, of Big Daddy, just everywhere Gino is, Big Daddy is there. And the representation of it is we see Big Daddy just murking people everywhere. So like there's one scene where Gino is like sitting in a bar, and then we see Big Daddy over in the cut just murking everybody. And of course this is a representation of how all around Gino is just AIDS is taking people out. We see another scene where Gino is sitting at the Native and he's typing on his typewriter, and then we see Big Daddy pull up with assault rifles and just start spraying everybody. And again, this is the visual representation of how everywhere Gino is, AIDS is right there killing everybody. You know what I mean? And as he himself is slowly dying, and Big Daddy is there to take him, but he's fighting it. You know what I mean? And it was just, man, that entire montage just, that was some stuff, man. That was some powerful stuff. But basically we see Gino, going through this whole phase of him just fighting it. And then eventually at the end of the last episode, he does end up dying. And when I tell y'all, I cried when Gino was laying in his bed and he turned to the side and Big Daddy was right there, and he looked over and he saw Patrick. Oh my God. When I tell y'all, I wept. Because it's just like Gino, like we this whole series we've been watching him cheat death. And then even in the end, he was fighting it. You know what I'm saying? Everybody around him is dropping like flies, and he was fighting it. And then when he finally just let go and he looks over and he sees Patrick there smiling, and I was crying. I wept. I wept like a baby. I'm like, American Horror Story, why you do this to me? But man, it was heavy. And then, you know, in addition to all of this, we are also following Adam, of course. So we find out that Nurse Hannah died. We kind of, at this point, we knew because in the last episode that we saw Nurse Hannah, we saw Big Daddy outside her window. And of course, again, Big Daddy is the representation of AIDS killing you. So if Big Daddy showed up outside her window, that means she was about to be up out of there. We go back in time to after Theo's funeral. Adam goes to Hannah's house. He sees the police there. Turns out she died. She died of natural causes. And so basically, Adam, he ends up finding some of the tapes that Nurse Hannah had recorded where she's like talking about this disease and she's talking about what's happening with the deer at Fire Island. And he ends up taking these recordings and he's trying to get like doctors to listen to it and trying to get the coroner to reinvestigate her cause of death and reinvestigate Theo's cause of death. And he's trying to let people know like what was going on, but nobody wants to hear it. Nobody's taking him seriously. The doctors don't care. The coroner didn't care. Like nobody cared. And it was really just showing how like the fact that this virus was decimating this community that people did not care about, they weren't doing all that they could to try and help. So we see Adam just kind of going on this crusade. You know, crusade is probably not a good word, but we see Adam just trying to do what he can to help. So he's putting up flyers, you know, telling the community to wear condoms because, you know, he realized that the virus is sexually transmitted. So he's telling people in the community, hey, you know, have your fun, but make sure that you're wearing condoms. And, you know, he goes to the bathhouse and he talks to the lady that sings there who also owns the bathhouse. And he tries to get her to hang up some flyers. And while he's there, she ends up telling him, you know, that, you know, her patrons, they keep, you know, getting sick, and she tried to tell the health department, you know, but they won't do anything about it. They won't come and sanitize and clean or whatever. Like they just don't care that her patrons keep getting sick because of course all her patrons are gay men and they don't care about them. So, you know, we're just seeing this theme of that, like, no, a whole community is being ravished by this thing and nobody cares. And it is just so disturbing to watch. And so basically we see Adam just like trying to do his part to help and, you know, trying to figure out what all to do. And it's just like nobody will listen to him. And, you know, basically, you know, we see a scene where, you know, before Gino passed, him and Adam were, you know, they were doing like protests together, and, you know, people were just trying to get the medical professionals to take this virus seriously and do something about it, try to come up with a cure, something, because it's like a whole community of people is just dropping like flies, but it's just like nobody cared because it was that community of people. You know what I'm saying? It was a situation where it was like, if this was affecting y'all would care. This would be a crisis. This would be hurry up and find a cure. But because it was the gay community, people did not care. And it was just so sad to watch. But basically, you know, Adam ends up being the only person that, you know, from the main cast that ends up surviving. We see him at the end of the series and he's at Gino's funeral and he's about to give a speech. You know, he's about to give words or whatever at Gino's funeral. And then that's how they end the series. And when I tell you, I just wept because I was like, what was this? Not what I was expecting. I don't think anybody was expecting that, but it was so well done. But I do have some additional thoughts about the series as a whole, and I definitely have some critiques. So that's basically the synopsis. Let's go ahead and get into my overall thoughts and the critiques that I have. So, my overall thoughts on episodes 9 and 10. I feel like by themselves, separately, those two episodes, I would honestly give them a 10 out of 10. They were powerful. They conveyed the subject matter in a way that was like, it showed the gravity of the subject matter. You came away from those two episodes fully understanding how horrific that time period was, right? When AIDS first came on the scene and it was ravaging this community, and so many people were just apathetic to it because they just didn't care about that community of people. And I feel like they fully conveyed that. We fully understood that through the powerfulness of those scenes. The imagery that they utilized, I mentioned before that scene where, we see the grave and we see the men just falling in one after the other, plus that entire montage as we see Gino getting sicker and sicker, and in the background Big Daddy is just murking everybody, wreaking havoc, a visual representation of just the death and destruction all around him as he himself is succumbing to the disease. Like, they nailed it. They nailed it on the imagery. They nailed it on the delivery. Like, it was 10 out of 10. However, when I take these last 2 episodes and I stick them onto the season as a whole, they don't match. The tone of these last 2 episodes and the tone of the entire season, it don't match. When I was watching these last 2 episodes, about halfway through that first episode, I was like, this is not what I expected. And then by the time I got to the end of that, episode 9, I was like, okay, wow. Like, they gave us that was heavy, that wasn't what I expected. And then when I got to episode 10 and it was just as heavy and just as serious, I was like, okay, I appreciate these 2 episodes. They were so well done, but they didn't match the rest of the season. It wasn't cohesive. We had this entire season where, yes, we had the virus, but it was almost like a backdrop to everything else that was happening. Throughout the entire season, it was, okay, I mentioned this in my other video. We started off with the situation at Fire Island. We kill all the deer at Fire Island. Cool. We have a conversation between Fran and Hannah about, how she thinks the virus is, the government. We never come back around to that. Those were the only times really that the virus was like at the forefront of the storyline. Everything else that had to do with the virus was just background stuff. Like, oh, people are scratching. Oh, people are casually talking about how, they're sick. We have one scene of people at the doctor's office saying that they have these different symptoms. The virus stuff was literally like a footnote of everything else that was happening. It's like, we knew that everybody had this virus, but it wasn't at the forefront of the story. So to come back around to the end and have the AIDS virus be the whole thing, right? Because that's the thing. This season of American Horror Story, the ghost, the bad guy, the horrific thing was the AIDS virus. But so why was it not at the forefront of the rest of the season? And that's what made it feel like so non-cohesive, because it's like, we spent the entire season chasing Whiteley the serial killer and hearing about his plan, and he wants to build a creature and Sentinel and this and that. We spent the whole season focused on that. Yeah, we had Big Daddy, but we didn't know who he was. We didn't know what he was doing. We didn't understand. So we spent a whole season with one sort of, theme. And then you give us these 2 episodes that, again, were very well done. They were very powerful. They perfectly conveyed the horrors of the AIDS virus, but they don't match the season. It's very odd the way they chose to do this. And I understand that this could have been like a conscious choice from them to do it like that, to just be like, let's completely switch it up for the finale. Like, I get it. They might have intended for it to not feel cohesive. I just didn't like that it didn't feel cohesive. And so for me, I would give those 2 episodes by themselves a 10 out of 10. I would give the rest of the episodes by themselves, so 1 through 8 by itself, I would probably give those a 7 out of 10. And I would give the last 2 a 10 out of 10. But as a whole, I would probably have to go like 6 out of 10, because I feel like based on the season that we had, I feel like we did not get the finale that belonged with that season. I feel like the finale that we got was something else. It felt like something completely separate, which made it feel like the season was kind of unfinished a little bit. You know what I'm saying? And so, I mentioned in my other video how, I questioned the Whiteley storyline, and I wondered, the way they ended the Whiteley storyline, it almost just kind of made it feel like, what was the purpose of this whole Whiteley storyline? The way they ended it, it just kind of made it purposeless to the larger picture. And after seeing this finale, I feel that even stronger. Once you get to the finale and you see what the actual theme, the whole theme of it was, and we understand what Big Daddy represented and stuff, it kind of makes the Whiteley storyline even more, it's like it was just a distraction. It was just a way to like throw us off. It was like a gotcha. It was like, we're going to give you this whole thing, but it has nothing to do with the actual theme and premise of the season as a whole. It's just like it's a red herring. Like the entire Whiteley storyline was a red herring. The real story was in the complete background the whole time. And maybe they meant to do that. Maybe that was an artistic choice that they made to say, we're chasing a serial killer, we're doing this, and the whole time HIV is secretly, setting up to destroy everybody and we didn't even realize it. Maybe that's the point. I don't know. Let me know what y'all think, but I would say that that's my main thing. It's not that the season as a whole was bad. It's definitely not that the last 2 episodes were bad. I actually think they were tremendously good. It's not that the season as a whole was bad. It's just that it didn't feel cohesive. And I think that, if you were gonna give us this heavy, serious season about the terrors of AIDS, then give us that the whole season. Don't give us like this, serial killer fluff and stuff, and then drop all this heaviness on us in the last 2 episodes out of nowhere, because I was not expecting that. I didn't expect to be weeping at the end of American Horror Story season 11. That's not what I expected coming off of the first 8 episodes. I didn't expect to be an emotional wreck, okay, by the end of this finale. So it came completely out of nowhere. And that's the other thing. Something so heavy, something so serious, and so heavy, I just would have liked to feel more prepared for it. Like I said, I did not expect to be weeping by the end of that. I didn't expect to be so like shooken up by the end of that, but I was. And I'm not necessarily, it's not necessarily that I'm like, I don't want to watch things that make me emotional or are heavy or are serious. It's not even that. It's just that what we got during the first episodes did not prepare us to be ready for that. You get what I'm saying? I'm expecting the same vibe that we've had for 8 episodes. And I go in and I end up and I get this super heavy, super serious, super sad. And it's just like, I just wasn't ready. Had we had that level of heaviness, that level of seriousness, that level of gravity in regards to the virus situation, had we had that throughout the series, even if it was just sprinkled in, somewhere in every episode, if we had that, then I could have been more prepared, but it just came out of nowhere and it just didn't feel cohesive. And I think that's really my only critique. I think, overall, the premise was so good. I love the premise of Big Daddy being a visual representation of AIDS killing people in the community. Like, I love that concept so much. It just didn't feel cohesive. It didn't feel cohesive. I even like us not knowing that that's what Big Daddy is until the end. I even like that part. I don't mind that we had no idea who Big Daddy was, where he came from, what he was doing until the last 2 episodes. I even like that. Like, I'm perfectly fine with that. It's just the tone shift. It's the shift from just a normal American Horror Story series to this completely like serious, powerful, heavy subject matter, and it was so different. It was such a stark change, and like I said, maybe that was their goal. Maybe they're like, we about to switch everything up on them. You know, it's a choice, right? To me, it took away from it in that I still don't feel like we got, it feels like those first 8 episodes didn't get a finale for real, because we had this whole entire storyline going on, and then it became something so completely different. Does this make sense? Am I making sense? Let me know if I'm making sense. But like I said, overall, I think I would have to give the entire season overall as a whole a 6 out of 10. I think that the last 2 episodes on their own, 10 out of 10 easily. They were so well done. I mean, just so well done. I almost wish we would have gotten that that vibe and that tone throughout the entire season. If we would have got a whole season with that tone, man, that would have been, oh, that would have been something. That would have been something. I would have appreciated that. I really would have. And I think that it would have been something so different for American Horror Story, because American Horror Story, you know, they dabble in the more like serious, heavy subject matter here and there. Like, you know, one that immediately comes to mind is the episode of Coven where Jessica Lange's character is dying, and just like the heaviness of that, the seriousness of it, those monologues that she had, like, you know, so we get that here and there in the American Horror Story universe. But if they would have given us a whole season that, you know, tone wise was like those last 2 episodes, man, that would have been something so different and so powerful. But they didn't, and I don't know. But those are my thoughts. Overall, I really did enjoy the season as a whole. I think that it was, I definitely think it was better than last season for sure. And yeah, I am eager to hear what y'all's thoughts are in the comment section. I've purposely been avoiding like any like reviews of these episodes and stuff. I wanted to go ahead and record my video first, but now I'm excited to like go watch some other people's reviews and see what their thoughts were. But those are my thoughts about the finale episodes and the entire season as a whole. Hopefully y'all enjoyed this video. If you have, make sure that you like and also consider subscribing to the tribe. And I want to hear what y'all's thoughts are in the comments, and I'll see y'all in the next video. Bye.